Hello and welcome to Auspol Explained. I'm your curly-haired host David, and today we're going to talk about journalism and its importance in helping us understand what's going on in Parliament and politics in general. I only did one unit of journalism in my first year of uni back in 2010, so I don't know things. But who better to tell us all about journalism than an actual journalist? That's right, I managed to actually convince one to talk to me. So, let's, without further ado, have her introduce herself with a brief physical description for accessibility purposes.
I'm Matilda Boseley, short-haired brunette woman wearing a really great shirt she bought today. I'm a social media reporter and presenter for The Guardian Australia, as well as an author. I write about ADHD and whatnot. And I'm around on social media, and that's kind of where a lot of my journalism takes place.
I do like the shirt. It's a sort of black and white floral pattern, and I am wearing my very serious fairy bread t-shirt. Only the most serious interviews get the delicious shirt vibes. As you mentioned, you published a book about ADHD. I see it actually in the corner of the screen, The Year I Met My Brain.
I'm finally doing what my publishers wish I would do all the time. I remember to sit it upright.
Hashtag not sponsored. I was actually just going to keep mentioning it.
Yeah, I can't stand it up in the background. I can't do it. It's a good book. Read it, maybe. I don't know.
As someone who does have ADHD and read the book, I do actually genuinely recommend it. And in classic ADHD fashion, we've wandered on a little bit about conversation without actually talking about what we're here to talk about, which is journalism and politics, how journalism plays pretty much what I would say vital role in the democratic process. Without it, how would we be informed about what's actually going on in our parliaments? So, are you ready to tackle that as a big topic of discussion?
Yeah, let's do it.
From someone who has actually talked a lot about politics, could you elaborate on the role of political journalism specifically and how it allows Parliament and politicians to be more accountable and transparent?
Yeah, for sure. And look, from the offset, I probably should note that I'm a reporter, a journalist who reports a lot on politics. I'm not a political journalist in the sort of well-known sense, in that I'm not sort of in the, Canberra bubble going away at the press gallery and whatnot. I'm sort of more on the communication style side of things. But yeah, look, journalism, it's hard to understate how important it is when it comes to politics, which is every part, every element of politicians being held accountable in any way, shape, or form is a result of journalism. Like there are structural things within the government that only exist because they know that, God, the journalists are going to get on our back if we don't do that anyway. Like, if you can just imagine governments operating with complete impunity, and I'm saying you can just imagine, you don't have to. There's many, many countries in the world where that happens, where there isn't a free press, and it really is a very it's a very, I want to say pipeline. It's barely a pipeline. It's a one bus stop away from kind of complete dictatorship. Really is the death of political journalism. I think there's a huge number of flaws in any system and the way that we, any country does the journalism at the moment. But it's not just something that would be really helpful for a functioning democracy. It is absolutely vital for a functioning democracy in that it is, in a very real way, the only thing stopping politicians from doing anything they want. Even the opposition party, if there was no sense of outward accountability, part of the our party's not colluding together is that, in America they call it the fourth estate. Australia, we don't really have the normal three estates, but no, it's absolutely central to government in Australia and every democracy, really.
Look, people are going to think negative things about politicians, but some of them think negative things about politicians because it's like, well, we found out about this scandal and we found out about this corruption, etc. And the only reason that they know about that is because journalism exposed it. And the reason why it doesn't happen more is because well, there is the risk that journalism will expose it. So there's this sort of like catch-22 of like exposing bad politicians holds them to more account, but then also for some people just makes it seem like politicians are bad. I'm not saying that journalism makes politicians look bad, but I'm saying that like you are a useful way to enforce and prevent politicians from being worse. Did that make sense? Did I express myself
Oh,
well?
I totally made sense to me that you were
Okay,
saying that
good.
like, yeah, oh gosh, you're ragging on the politician, but it's like you only know that they can be ragged on because of that. Like, yeah, I
Yeah.
got it.
Yeah, you wouldn't know about bad behavior until someone tells you about that. So it's good that you know that something bad is happening. It's not good that something bad is happening. Anyway, politicians, some of them are terrible. Some of them, to be fair, are just like daggy uncles and dads. Genuinely just like an embarrassing dad vibe.
It's truly the least cool job. And keep this in. I think being a politician is the least cool job you can have. I don't think a cool person has ever made it to politics, and I do believe that is the way it should be.
Fair enough, yeah.
And I think, I think a lot of young people have quite an earned, honestly, sort of discontent with how a lot of political journalism in Australia and in America is run. And it's this interesting place being a journalist and like very much understanding that discontent and disliking a lot of what I see as well. And then, but I guess there is also always that worry of, letting being tarred with the same brush in that the alternative of not having journalism, I mean, the ideal alternative is we get better journalism. But I think when people sort of I think it's quite easy to sort of throw the baby, I've hit my monstera, throw the baby out with the bathwater and sort of assume that political journalism is a force for evil in the world. But I think what people underestimate is like just how terrible it would be without it. So even bad political journalism is infinitely better than none. But that being said, I think plenty can be done to improve the way we do it.
That does raise kind of an interesting point about like journalism is in its sense a political force in that like it is not a neutral thing. Like the existence of journalism and media scrutiny is inherently fundamentally important. The practicing of it has different sort of aspects to it. Different media outlets have different media biases, but also because you operate mostly on a pretty much social media TikTok scale, like social media in general is not well known for its robust fact checking. Journalism is vitally important. Good journalism is even more fundamentally important. How do people figure out what media sources they can trust and learn more about what happens around them in an actually constructive and useful way?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, look, I'm speaking here as an individual, but as a Guardian Australia reporter, I'd be like, oh, just go to the Guardian, mate. But I think
Hashtag not sponsored.
I wish they would. But I think a lot of the time, at least being optimistic, and I think 90% of the time this is true, maybe 95, the actual facts that you're going to read in an article, no matter where they come within Australia, no matter if it's coming from a large newsroom, the actual facts themselves, chances are going to be correct. I think it's a lot more about the framing, the choice of what facts go where, what context and what background is given at what point, the wording, that's what causes it to land somewhere on a political spectrum, right? And whether that be bias or just sort of subconscious bias or certain people writing with agendas. I don't think that is the majority of journalism. So I think it is, I mean, like, I know that it's a bit of a meme online to talk about like, oh, media literacy, it's down the toilet. Like honing your media literacy skills is really important. Anytime you read an article, I mean, I think we also have such a tendency to get into absolute conspiratorial territory where, somehow we think that Rupert Murdoch personally is, demanding each individual journalist write exactly the words they write. It's nothing like that. But also, understanding what message are the choices that this writer is making, and what is causing that. And reading basically more than one article is a really great way. Like, there's no tried and true way to be like, this journalism is good and this is bad. And I'm not even saying that, like, I think there's no, I mean, like, I'm dancing around the point here. People have a lot of criticisms of the Murdoch press. There is a lot of great journalism in the Murdoch press as well. There is a reason it is tarred with that brush a lot of the time, and there is issues with it, but there's also a lot of good journalism there. So I would not say you can absolutely write off everything. I think you have a context of who owns a media organization when you're going to read their thing, and then read multiple, read an article from the ABC and then watch, the video that we put up on TikTok, and, and read the news stories there. And it's about just having a breadth and, like, oh my God, read more than the headline. Really, honestly, if you're wanting to ensure you're getting good journalism, just first 5 paragraphs, mate, you're going to be miles ahead of so many others. So I think it really is about diversity and having a broad range of things that you're consuming, whether I'm saying reading, but that's just because I work at a print organization. So it's my default, but, consume a broad range of journalism and just have that thought in the back of your mind of, who is this catering for? Not what decisions or what agenda really even are they trying to push, but, like, who are they trying to speak to and why? I think is always just worth keeping in the back of your mind.
Like, that is genuinely the advice that I give to people, is, like, read more than one article. Like, you, like, compare and contrast, and then you can, if there is some, like, framing that one article is making that is trying to make you think a certain way, if you have a competing article to compare and contrast, you can better understand and critically examine that and come to your own decision of whether or not that is a valid framing or not, or discover that the facts pretty much align the same, and it's, not necessarily an opinion piece.
Actually, just one other thing is that, if it ever sounds too wild and conspiratorial, like, continue reading the article and it's a lot less wild than you think. I think that's also part of, like, ensuring that you're, if something seems crazy things rarely actually happen. So it's worth reading until you can get the full context and read another article and things like that. I think that's also just a worthy tool to have in your tool belt.
Speaking of getting information from multiple sources, one of the sources that people get their information from now is TikTok, which you're very active on. Fun little fact, you won a Quill Award for Innovation in Journalism in 2021. The judges said, you had a remarkable individual effort with a refreshing and clever approach to reaching new audiences on a platform not known for its journalistic reach.
Do you know the feelings you have when it's just a giant room of all your peers and then they just blast your TikToks right up on the big screen? It was a wild moment.
I hate it every single time someone at work is like, I watched your video, and I'm like,
Yeah.
You spearheaded the Guardian TikTok. Why do you think TikTok is an important space for journalism to really inhabit?
During the pandemic, I think TikTok changed a lot. And what I was realizing as I was pouring just far too many hours a day into it during lockdown is that there was a lot of, like, big political conversations, not, necessarily Auspol, but, discussing ethics and morality and, social issues there. And it reminded me, and I mean this in a bad way, of when I was on Tumblr in 2014. Derogatory, I mean, in that it is a lot of people who are figuring things out and are really passionate about it and are really trying to work out and pass how the world works, and absolutely no supervision or fact checking. And I say this as one of the people who was doing that on Tumblr in the day with just no perspective. And I kind of remember thinking, gosh, I kind of wish that just somewhere on Tumblr there was just someone with like who, maybe they would lose their job if they said something really incorrect. Like just with that level of accountability, just with, and that kind of weirdly is like part of what journalists bring to TikTok is that like we'll get in trouble if we say something that's wrong. And basically not to be there or direct the conversation or to be the voice that's speaking it, but just to be one voice in the conversation that has that level of accountability, that has resources to answer the questions that people have, and has a level of, emotional divestiture that it's not just people saying how they feel, because these are issues that like people feel really strongly about and they should. And I just kind of also think that, it doesn't hurt for there to be a bit of a bit of a something that's just a bit more, here are the facts. And so I think that was really one of the thoughts. And then that kind of realization that I'm like, I could kind of help do that was one of my big motivations. But also the kind of question of why TikTok is also like, it's where people are. It is where those conversations are going on. And I think what traditional newsrooms have really struggled with is, they've finally caught up to like people using websites. We got there. Took them long enough. But there's this kind of, I think there's a fundamental misunderstanding, or maybe I'm not giving them enough credit. I think there's more understanding nowadays, but I don't think that a lot of those old guard newsrooms really understand the way young people use the internet, which is not like no one is typing in www.abc.com/news or whatever the thing is and going to the homepage. No, you visit certain websites and you have the information aggregated through those. You are there on a website for fun, and if you find some news along the way, great. No one's putting read the news as their like to-do list, in the morning. And what I think is really amazing about TikTok, what I just said about like, oh my God, gosh, for the love of God, read more than the headline, which is that TikTok doesn't have that click barrier. It's not like you read a headline, you have to go out of your way to click an article and read it. You're scrolling, you're kind of there, and suddenly that's amazing. That's like an amazing opportunity that journalists so rarely get, which is like, you're already here, let me have 60 seconds of your time if you want. There isn't that barrier of convincing people to read the news in the first place, or worse, giving them a little bit of the information without the proper context and sending them on their merry way, which I think is what happens a lot when we have these feeds where you just get the headline and then you scroll on. Because I'm guilty of that too in my, sort of downtime, my pleasurable time. I'm not wanting to, I have to click on and going through and you have to put down the paywall button and it's a whole kerfuffle. But with social media, and I'm saying TikTok, I think more broadly what I make actually is vertical video, as they say, like across social media. So I'm, Instagram and everything like that. I think we do have this opportunity to speak to people and to like bring new here's my line that I roll out occasionally. It's not that young people aren't interested in the news. It's that for a long time, the news has not been interested in young people. And it's just respecting them and as an audience and providing them news in the way that they consume content in general. It's kind of obvious once you think about it. And it's really great that I think we're all finally catching up. By we, I mean the collective we of the journalists of Australia.
Yeah, it seems like TikTok is kind of the future, at least in the short term, of communication with young people. Even Peter Dutton is on it now.
I was his ninth follower, I'd like it to be noted.
Ninth? Wow, top 10.
Yeah, I got in early. Yeah. I'm a foundation follower of Peter Dutton's.
We're young, like we understand that TikTok is important, but do you feel like people like undervalue or like don't necessarily respect your work because they're like, oh, it's just TikTok, or oh, it's just the Instagrams or whatever?
In the first 6 months of me doing it, maybe. Now, not at all. I mean, now, if anything, older journalists are sort of like asking how they can do it or how they can get involved. Or this is not like a format I entirely created. I wasn't the first journalist on TikTok or anything like that. Um, but as one of the people who are known for doing it in this space, yeah, it's been really interesting to see how quickly people saw the value in it and started taking it seriously. And a lot of newsrooms in Australia do TikTok content nowadays. Yeah, look, I think at first there was a bit of, okay, why would anyone want to have their news delivered to them that way? But I think I was lucky in the place that I worked in that they sort of, I don't know, were willing to be like, okay, maybe, I even if, we don't fully understand it, people seem to be connecting with it and reacting to it. So, charge ahead. And I was really, really lucky. And I think, there was probably lots of people who were trying to do it before me that maybe didn't have that same level of support and didn't, weren't because oh my God, it takes so long. It's also a time investment. It
Yeah.
takes a lot longer than writing an article. So yeah, I mean, yes, like I think there was a certain degree of, oh, it's just TikTok at first. And now, as you said, like politicians are on TikTok. The last election, TikTok, one could make the argument that TikTok was make or break for some seats. There's candidates that, it used it massively to their advantage. I think people understand that, and I think we talk a lot about like, oh, it's young people, it's young people. It's anyone under 40 is on TikTok, and it is the place that a lot of those political conversations are happening.
Do you feel like the way that like news is being presented, or at least what is chosen to be news, is being like influenced by the algorithm, or is it more like the format has to adjust to the platform, but fundamentally what needs to be news is still news. Sometimes it just doesn't get the clicks or views that it needs. How much would you say the algorithm is influencing this?
Look, I think all journalism is a constant push and pull in terms of how to get people to actually read it and making sure you aren't compromising your journalism in any way, shape, or form. Like there is always going to be in every newsroom the tendency to be like, oh well, I don't know, maybe let's do the kitten story because people are going to click on it. I'm in this, I don't know, a kitten stuck in a Christmas tree or something. But in this hypothetical. But then there's also like, okay, but when you do the kitten story, that is resources that you're taking away from, the inflation analysis for the RBA bank, the RBA. Uh, so there is constantly that push and pull. And I think there is that push and pull on TikTok as well, definitely. And, you know, but what I found really interesting is it's not the kitten stuck in the tree story that do well. It is me explaining what the cash rate is and why the RBA is putting up interest rates. Like, I think what I've been really pleasantly surprised by is how much hard, straight news people really respond to it, with the notable exception of climate change. Apparently, no one wants to hear about that in their free time. Yeah, I think I've been really pleasantly surprised by that. And again, I think that speaks to the fact that people aren't just on these platforms for fun. They're there to sort of expand their worldview as well. The other issue, of course, with social media reporting, which is something that is constantly on my mind, is that this isn't a neutral platform that we're posting to. It is a platform that is, no matter what platform you're posting at the moment, it is a platform that is controlled by a company or individuals with political agendas in and of themselves. We've all seen how Twitter has changed since Elon Musk took office there. And that's, a very extreme example, but the same agendas exist for all social media platforms to some level. And I think that is also something that is it's a new challenge that I think a lot of journalists are coming up against, of what happens when your capacity to report the news also is filtered through that's that other agenda. And I think that's why it's really important that we don't only have social media news. I think that's very central. But there's certain things, even like on TikTok, if you talk about violence and death, your video seems to get less views, or you can't. And when I'm saying less views, that's not like, oh, I got less views. It's like, well, no, less people are finding out about that. So reporting on conflicts across the world can be really difficult, because I find myself there like, oh, is it worth, you know, oh, what words can I use to skirt around this topic and things like that. And the fact that it is so opaque, we don't really know what is censored or what isn't, what's pushed out, what's not. And so, it adds that extra dimension of, I don't know, it's almost trying to solve a little riddle just to get the news out. And I think that has some serious implications. I still think, on the balance of all things, having news there is a net positive, but it is a challenge that we're having to face and work out.
Unalived, that bothers me. It must be such a weird experience for someone where English is their second language, like trying to learn words, and then like the subtitles are wrong because you can't say certain words. As you mentioned, like surprisingly, or unsurprisingly, depending on perspective, a lot of the more hard news stories get really good traction on a platform that is predominantly younger people. Have you seen much of like an impact or shift in young people caring or engaging or understanding politics more because there is political and educational content on TikTok and social media?
I mean, I'm potentially not the best measure, given that, 2007, so when I was 10, I watched the entire election coverage all night and they couldn't take me away from it. So like in my world, young people have always cared a lot about politics. But no, I do think that there is that engagement. And I think it is that thing of if you're willing to just, I don't know, cater to young people even a tiny bit, there's a huge appetite for news. There's a real thirst to understand. No one enjoys someone bringing something up in conversation you've had no idea that, that war even happened, or whatever it is, that politician. Like, no one enjoys not knowing who the deputy prime minister is, which is, always my test that I ask when people start talking about the US politics too much, to make sure that they think about Australia. Young people want the news. It's just the way that we kind of have set up the news is so divorced from the way that young people use the internet, or that young people consume content in general. And I mean, yeah, one of the really positive things that I've taken away from my job and this whole experience is like, there is a hunger there if you're just kind of willing to adapt the recipe a bit. I didn't mean for that to turn into a whole metaphor. Do one tiny, adapt your content a tiny bit to make sure that it's accessible for young people, and they're absolutely willing to learn and engage in really, really in-depth, interesting conversations in the comments, like really engaged political. Like Instagram, it's usually just insulting what I'm wearing. TikTok, really in-depth political conversations and debates going on, and it's really beautiful to see.
Anything else to add about, journalism and social media?
I have very complicated mixed feelings about it, but I think it is absolutely not perfect. Both journalism and social media, but I think on the balance of all things considered, a force for good in the world, usually.
I feel like we messaged each other about this, like we floated this idea as an interview 2022, was it?
Yeah, that sounds about right. I think it was during the election you first suggested we collaborate, and it's only taken me 24 months to reply.
Because we both have ADHD, which reminds me, where can we find your book?
What? This book that should have been sitting up the whole interview? You can find it in bookstores and also online.
The two places you buy books.
Oh my gosh. There's pictures in there, I swear. There's also an audiobook. I know that we struggle to read sometimes.
The bookcase behind me, mostly decorative. I mostly read ebooks.
Haven't read a book on there.
Anyway, thank you so much for your time and all the effort it took to organize this. Thank you so much for speaking with us today.
And thank you for having us on. And us is just me also.
Have a wonderful day.
You too.
And there you have it. Thank you so much for Matilda Boseley for her time and expertise. And also thank you for tuning in. I hope you've learned a few things, enjoyed this interview, and as always, share, subscribe, comment down below who else I should talk to and ask them things about their job and what they do. Keep in mind it has to be politics related. I'm not just going to talk to your neighbour about his shed. Anyway, this episode was not sponsored by Matilda Boseley or the Penguin or the Guardian. I do actually genuinely recommend her book, it is good. But you could sponsor me via Patreon. The link is in the description. For only a couple of dollars a month, you can give me a couple of dollars a month. Sounds fair to me. And all that money goes into my little one day buy a second-hand electric car fund. That's a genuine goal, not just a joke for the end screen. Anyway, thank you so much to my supporters on Patreon. That's all for me. I'll see you next time.